Hey everyone, Jeremy Cubas here. Atheism is stupid. Happy Friday, everyone. Although all atheistic positions are foolish, the contemporary quote-unquote rational ones seems probably to be the dumbest in the history of philosophy. Theos was the Greek term designated by the ancient Greeks that really referred to the first principle of reality, which, as Aquinas describes in the first book of the Summa Contra Gentiles, that is derived from another Greek word theoste, which means the end of knowledge or the limits of what can be known or what is known fundamentally. So now, this has been understood by ancient Greeks such as Plato, Aristotle, as well as the entire history of the Neoplatonists in the medieval period, as well as the scholastics, all that through even contemporary world. Now, there was a shift around the 1600s where a lot of this got lost in its meaning, but fundamentally, academically, this is what most people understood it to be. So during the medieval period, it was synthesized as being itself, or the act of to be, or quies as it was in Latin, or actus purus, which means pure act. So the meaning that theos, or translated into God, is being itself, was and has been a fundamental aspect of philosophical discourse for at least 2,000, if not 3,000 years. Now, there are many arguments as to why this ought to be accepted, right? They've been popularized by great thinkers such as Aquinas. And there's really only been one that I pretty much think that is the only argument really needed. And it's one that many times is partially understood or misunderstood by many people. And that's really the ontological argument. Now, the ontological argument has been reformulated by several thinkers throughout history, from Augustine to Anselm to Aquinas, Descartes, contemporaries like Edward Feser, and so on and on. Many have reformulated this argument. Now, you could read their arguments, and that's fine, but I'm not going to really cover one specific form of their argument, because what I find most interesting is that every formulation of the argument presents a necessary definite description to God that makes it true by definition. So to deny the ontological argument, to deny God ultimately, is to deny your own existence, and thusly you deny the ability to even deny the argument or the ability to deny God himself. So let me explain, right? So given the definition of God as to be itself, quiesced, right? Then tautologically, to say God is not is to say to be itself is not, or being itself is not. And so to say that to be itself is not is to say that any instances of to be are not to be. For no equivocal instance of being can be if the univocal principle of to be itself is not. Now, atheism posits that God is not. So again, tautologically, if God is to be or being itself, the atheist position to be or being itself is not. But if the act of to be is not, then the atheist's very particular existence is not. And if the atheist's particular existence is not, then the assertion that God is not cannot be made. So one cannot deny the existence of God if they are not. But of course, the atheist does exist, for this proposition does exist. And he is denying the existence of God, but he is, and therefore, since he is, the act of to be must be. So let me put this syntactically so we can see it clearly. Because sometimes the verbiage can get lost and it sounds much more complicated really than what it is. And so if we put G for God, tautologically or biconditionally, be, which would be being itself or to be. So if you have God, necessarily you have being. If you have a tautology, it can be worded either way, but it means the same thing. So God is being and being is God. And if you were to deny God's existence, then you are denying being's existence, which is a modus tollens, because you are denying the consequent, therefore you must also deny the antecedent. Now, if you have a particular existence, any particular existence, you can name anyone, then you have being itself. For as the principle goes, you cannot have an equivocal state of being without being itself. And so if you have an equivocal state of being, then you have the univocal state of being. But we already denied in the first argument the existence of being itself. Therefore, we are also denying the particular existence, again, a modus tollens. But if you deny God's existence, that is the principle that is being held by the atheist. So if you have not G, then you have an atheist. However, we already established that G and B is a tautology. They are the same thing. So to deny G is to deny B. So the atheist position would be not B. So if you have not being, then you have the atheist position. Now, the atheist himself is a particular existing thing. So if you have A, it is a particular existing thing. So it's a tautology to existing thing. And so if you have A, therefore, you necessarily, since if you have an existing thing, you have being itself. So if you have A, you have B, but you already denied being as an atheist, therefore you deny the atheist as well. But of course, that doesn't make any sense, because the atheist is holding the position that he exists, but God does not exist. And so the atheist does exist. So if you have an atheist, you do have a particular existing thing. You do have the atheist, therefore you have a particular existing thing. And if you have a particular existing thing, then you have being itself, the univocal state of being. And you do have a particular existing thing, therefore you have a univocal state of being. And since being is identical to God, and you do have being, therefore God is. So let's put this in long form so you can see the argument fleshed out. If you have A, then you have an existing thing, then you have being, then you have God. You do have an atheist, you do have A, therefore you have an existing thing, being, and God. And if you do have an existing thing and being, then you have God, so therefore you have God. So to deny that God is to deny that the self is. But since the self is indubitable, God is thusly logically indubitable. The entire atheistic position is absurd. What makes the contemporary atheists even more absurd is the fact that many of them want to position themselves as being hyper-rational, as if they are denying something as absurd as a pagan god. But their position is the most irrational position that one can hold, for it refutes its own existence in order for it to refute the proposition. And so when you hear atheists talk about how they hope that the Abrahamic God or whatever, as Dawkins said, he posted up recently, I believe it was from something a few years ago, but he hopes that the God of Abraham is going to go on the wayside as Zeus or any other pagan god. He's completely misunderstanding his own position. For the position of theist, because that's where the term theist comes from the idea of first principle, that the first principle is being itself. And so to deny being itself really is to deny one's own particular existence, for everything that is equivocal is rested on the univocal. You cannot have a particular state of being without the univocal state of being. You cannot have a particular existing triangle without the reality that a triangle is a three-sided closed plane figure. You just can't have that. The universal principle is ontologically prior to that of the particular instance. All right, so that's really the show for today, or at least for this segment for non-members. If you want to see the rest of the show, please subscribe on our Patreon or on our website, contragentilis.com, and become a member. It's really helpful. We want to put out more content, and the more members we have, the more content we could put out. So thank you, and see you tomorrow.